Should we only ever nasal breathe? That means breathing through our nose. That is going to be the topic of this episode of Chi Life. All right, as a lot of these videos seem to take on a bit of a theme of helping to clear up misconceptions or help people to look a little bit deeper beyond some things that are often presented in an oversimplified way. And that can stop people from understanding things as fully as they could and getting the most benefit from things, and sometimes maybe even making some mistakes in their practice or in how they apply things in their lives. This is one that there's some misconceptions around, and some people think, okay, you should only ever breathe through your nose. You should never ever breathe through your mouth. Now, there's a lot of benefit to generally breathing through your nose, and that means both in and out through the nose. Almost all of the time, if we are healthy and there's not something preventing us from doing so, we should be breathing in and out through our nose. And I'll talk a little bit, hopefully reasonably briefly, about some of those benefits. You know, there's some real clear physical benefits in terms of, as we breathe through our nose, we naturally, so we think of this aperture, breathing through the nose, as just this fleshy bit on the outside of our face, but what that also means is we're breathing through all the sinuses behind our nose, and there's a lot more apparatus in there. So all of the air is going through there before it comes down into our lungs, and as it does this, it's being filtered and also warmed, or cooled even, and humidified. So we're conditioning the air so it's clean, or as clean as we can make it with our filtering apparatus. It's the right temperature and it's the right level of moisture before it comes down into our bronchioles and our lungs, which are quite sensitive, quite delicate. And so we want the air to be nice and clean and, you know, moist and before it gets there, so we protect our lungs and they can do their job the best way that they can. In addition to this, when we're breathing, and again, particularly inhaling through our nose, it means that we're also constantly sampling the air. Talked about this in a recent vlog, the one on the sniffari. It means we're constantly sampling the air to smell what's going on around us. And this is really important for a number of reasons. We often, in our modern age, aren't paying that much attention to our smell, but it gives us so much information about what's going on around us. You know, good healthy things, good healthy chemicals we're being exposed to from plants and trees and things like that, but also things that might be dangerous to us that we need to avoid or we need to get away from, right? And so we can only do that if we breathe through our nose, otherwise we're not going to be smelling it. Breathing out through our nose, again, we should be doing this most of the time too. This has some really important benefits in terms of producing nitrous oxide, which then helps to maintain the health of all of these tissues in the sinuses. It helps to kill bacteria and things like that. It helps to keep the blood flowing freely, and so it keeps the passageways open, and so on. So it's part of the cleansing protection of all these pathways through there. It also helps regulate the internal pressure within the body because it's a smaller aperture. It means that we empty out in a more controlled, gentle way rather than breathing through the mouth. So yeah, almost all the time we should be breathing in and out through the nose. That's the healthy, more relaxed way for us to breathe. So on a more general physical level, breathing through the nose it will naturally cause us to be more relaxed. I won't go into all of the details why, but basically our muscles will be more relaxed, our nerves will be more relaxed, except in exceptional circumstances, our hormones will tend to be in a more relaxed levels within our body. The exception being when we sniff, because this alerts and activates, and so that can spike up hormones and spike up nerve activity and so on. But for general breathing in and out through the nose, we're going to be much more relaxed, so we're using less energy, we're less stressed in many ways. We can just function better. All right. But does that mean we should always breathe through our nose. Just because it's the best way for us to breathe almost all the time doesn't mean that's absolutely all the time. And this is an important thing to understand, I think, sometimes. Sometimes we, there is this tendency to oversimplify and think like, someone's breathing through their mouth too much, therefore that means we should always breathe through our nose. No, 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 no. Yeah, we should almost always breathe through our nose, but there's still times when breathing through our mouth is really valuable and even important. So an important one being, of course, if there's some reason physically why we can't breathe through our nose, if it's obstructed in some way, well, it's important that we breathe through our mouth. It's important that we keep breathing. So much better to just keep on breathing than to go, I can't breathe through my nose, so therefore I won't breathe, right? That's, at its absolute most simple. But there's a bunch of other reasons as well. And again, some of these are like pretty simple, common sense. When I'm speaking, guess what? I'm sending air out through my mouth. And so there might be some phases where sometimes I breathe through my nose, but a lot of the breath is going to be in and out through the mouth when I'm speaking. This is natural because we're using it for vocal production. On to some maybe more subtle reasons why we might breathe through our mouth. I mentioned how breathing through the nose tends to relax everything through the body. Breathing through the mouth tends to activate things right through the body. Again, there is the exception, just like sniffing actually, and breathing through the nose, but sniffing is actually activating rather than relaxing. Similarly, there are some instances of breathing through the mouth, so particularly yawning and sighing, which are relaxing. They relax us down. But in general, breathing through the mouth is more activating. And this is one of the reasons I mentioned talking, why actually talking tends to be activating. We use a lot of energy when we're talking. And some people just find that energizing. Other people find if they talk for a while, they're like, oh, using all that energy, and they get quite tired from it. But in many other ways, breathing through the mouth is activating. Again, I won't get into all the nitty-gritty of why this works on a mechanical level, but when we breathe through our mouth, it activates our muscles more strongly. Our muscles are inclined and able to brace more effectively when we're using the mouth than when we're using the nose, and there's an instinctive mechanical reason for that. But yeah, our nerves become more active, our hormones tend to spike up, and we can brace and contract our muscles more strongly, which is really important if there's something where we need strength or speed, right? So if you're wanting to run absolutely as fast as you can for a short period of time, you're going to do better breathing through your mouth. Now, that's very different from if you want to run for longer. Certainly if you want to run for a marathon, a long time, you're going to be much better breathing through your nose, right? Because you're not straining and stressing your body any more than it needs to. You're going to have more endurance. Even for relatively shorter distances, you're going to get more benefit from staying more relaxed and keeping, all the internal organs working in a smoother, more relaxed way by breathing through a nose, in and out through your nose. But when it's a really short burst, like a 100-meter sprint or something like that, the extra boost of having more activation of your muscles, of your nerves, of your hormones, means you're going to be able to go faster. Yeah, and so it's worthwhile. The trade-off is worthwhile for that short instance. Similarly, in terms of strength, right? Classic application of this that ties in very directly with Qigong is martial arts, right? If you're both either striking or being struck, being hit, and you're wanting to have maximum strength, whether that be maximum strength to send force outwards or maximum bracing power against a strike coming inwards, you're going to use the mouth as a way to breathe for that. So you get more activation. You're not going to use the nose for that. Now, in between, does that mean that if you're in some kind of, again, just martial arts application, you're in some kind of fighting, some kind of engagement, does that mean you're going to breathe in and out through the mouth the whole time? Unless if it's a very short engagement, like a few seconds, yeah, you might. But if it's longer than that, and so the sort of application where people would normally think of this is like competitive environment where you might have a round of several minutes and so on. No, The preference is going to be breathe in and out through the nose as much as possible during that to keep yourself relaxed. But at those points where you need that extra strength, that extra force for moments, use the mouth. It's more important to do that. You're going to, what's better, to stay nice and relaxed or to get knocked out or to get a broken rib or something? So, oh no, okay, the extra strength of that breathing through the mouth, it's worth it when you need it. Similarly, just lifting something heavy. So depends how heavy it is, right? And again, there's nuance to this. I won't get into too much detail, because sometimes actually the best thing is to hold your breath. We actually get greater bracing strength holding the breath than breathing, whether it's the nose or the mouth. So in some instances, actually holding the breath is best. But in instances that aren't quite that extreme, yeah, use the mouth. Greater strength out to the muscles and so on. And that's going to help you to be able to maybe lift a heavier weight, maybe be able to brace and hold your body's shape and position better. Use the mouth. The trade-off is worth it. You might not be filtering your air quite as much. You might not be putting as much nitrous oxide through the sinuses for that little moment, but in that moment, the strength is more important. Yeah. And so it's worthwhile. And then as soon as possible, go back to the nasal breathing. Okay, so these are some really physical examples. What about from a more energetic perspective? In Qigong, of course, the physical ties in with the energy, but sometimes when we're talking about energy, we're talking about things that are a little bit more nuanced. And even here, most of the time, I couldn't say what percentage, 90%, 99%, maybe more than 99% of the time, we're going to want to be breathing in and out through our nose to just keep things nice and steady and relaxed. But there are times when we're going to want to activate the energy more strongly, or times when we're specifically going to want to release the energy strongly and freely. That breathing through the mouth is going to accomplish that better for us. And for the most part, this will be for relatively brief periods of time. Sometimes it might be a single exhale, right? One breath out through the mouth to release some energy. Sometimes we might go through a phase of several breaths where we're inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth, inhaling, exhaling through the mouth, as a way to activate the energy more right through that phase of whatever we're doing, and also as part of that release the energy. Sometimes we might engage it consciously and quite strongly when when we're aware of some stuck energy and we want to release it. We'll use the mouth because it's more effective for that releasing. Generally, this is going to be for relatively short periods of time, because then the trade-off starts to go the other way if it gets too long and we're not filtering our air and we're not allowing our systems to be relaxed and recuperate properly. Okay, that's not useful anymore. But there are times, specific applications, both for very practical physical reasons and also for, more subtle, and again, it is connected to the physical still, but more subtle things relating to our energy, where the mouth is useful. All right, hopefully that was helpful for some of you, gives you a little bit of context. I know there's some things that, well, hopefully I've given you a bit of an overview of understanding this. There's some things I haven't got too deep into some of the specifics behind it, and that's because there's a lot to understand in terms of what goes on chemically, what goes on structurally, physically within the body, basically the physics behind that and how that ties in with our anatomy and how that, affects a whole lot of things in our body. Much more than I can cover in a vlog like this, but at least a bit of understanding around this topic. It really is helpful to understand some of these details behind our breath more comprehensively. It helps us to understand the use of our breath in our daily lives and how we can apply that more effectively. And then it will also help us to understand it within our Qigong practices as well. Now, often in different Qigong practices, different types of breathing are prescribed. Specifically breathe in and out through your nose, or specifically breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, or specifically, sometimes, not so commonly, but sometimes breathe in and out through the mouth, or specifically hold your breath during this portion and so on. Understanding all of that information behind how our breath works will help you to understand how those specific breathing techniques work within a practice. And so you'll really know the reason why. And when your mind understands why, it's able to get behind things better. You're able to then fine tune your practice and able to make it more effective. Again, within Qigong practice, we're using our mind, our body, and our breath together most of the time. And the better our mind understands, often the more effective we can make our practice. When you understand the sort of nitty gritty behind the breath and how it works, it will also help you to understand how sometimes you can modify your breath within a practice, even if it's prescribed a certain way, to sometimes understand that, hey, actually, sometimes doing it a slightly different way to get a slightly different result might be beneficial. Or also, it also gives us a lot of understanding simply of if we're doing different things and we notice our breath is changing unconsciously, because most of the time we want to let our breath just function unconsciously, but why unconsciously it's changing in different ways, why it is that our breath might be changing, which then gives us insight into how we're responding to our environment or the activity or so on, which can then put us in a better position to navigate our way through that better, to make changes in whatever we're doing or how we're doing it or the environment we're in and so on. All right, hopefully that's been interesting, maybe helpful for some of you. Yeah, I look forward to talking to you on another one soon.